Zelensky had started giving a history lesson.
It is one of the most astonishing moments that we have ever seen happen inside the Oval Office. The president said to Zelensky, "You either make a deal or we are out."
Let's watch Kaitlan Collins as she breaks down the rather heated argument that transpired in the White House between Trump, Vance, and Zelensky, as she was present for the rather disgraceful act from our president. So be sure to like this video. It helps us out a ton. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let's jump right in.
It's not an overstatement for sure to say that it is one of the most astonishing moments that we have ever seen happen inside the Oval Office between these world leaders essentially shouting at one another by the end of this, devolving into, at points, Trump and Vance berating Zelensky for saying that he was not being grateful enough for the aid that the United States has provided to Ukraine, and Zelensky arguing back that they do not understand Putin, essentially, that he will violate any agreement if the proper guarantees aren't in place. That seemed to particularly incense Trump, as he was saying, don't tell us what we're going to feel. Zelensky has been arguing that Putin will not stop with Ukraine, that he will go on to other Eastern European nations, including Poland, as he made the argument there. And Trump was essentially pushing back on that and telling Zelensky that he had no cards and that he needed to make a deal. And at one point, I think the most striking line from that could foreshadow what the rest of these talks are going to look like, what this press conference could look like if we still see these world leaders come out where they were supposed to sign that deal, is the president said to Zelensky, "You either make a deal or we are out."
It's shocking because of the break from normal American foreign policy, where since World War II, we learned largely trying to stay uninvolved in this region leads to a spillover that ends up dragging us in anyway. So making a broad coalition from our allies and those who, want to preserve democracy and the things we believe in, and, bringing in these European countries as a result ensures us leverage to dissuade this kind of larger conflict. And it's largely been successful. And I'll die on the hill of, had we responded to the incursion into Crimea in 2014 through NATO, that we wouldn't be in this situation. But that is the fault of Obama and then Trump for both being too tentative to want to do anything. But now Trump and Vance essentially telling Zelensky, hey, you have no options, so you're going to take what you get. And if not, we're not going to help you. That's literally giving away all leverage in negotiations to Putin from the person who is supposed to be our ally, who Putin can now offer the worst deal possible, not budge at all in negotiations, where conceding nothing leads to him getting what he wants either way, because worst case, Zelensky denies and now Putin can invade because Trump isn't going to back Zelensky anymore.
Now that comes after 40 minutes before this exchange happened, where the president was talking about how he wasn't ready to make security guarantees yet. He said the United States would still send some weaponry to Ukraine. Questions going back and forth about how a deal would hold, how a minerals deal would be carried out. All of that was essentially wiped away by those last 10 minutes that were so incredibly heated there in the Oval Office, and essentially ended with Vance saying that this is not something that should be litigated in front of the press, the many press who were inside that room. Trump saying that he thought it was actually good that it was playing out. And I asked Trump as we were leaving, can the two of you still negotiate given what we just watched that left everyone else in the room silent? He told me, quote, "We'll see."
Trump pretty much spent 40 minutes trying to strong arm a country that was just invaded to give us minerals to help them defend their sovereignty, which is wild, that to protect democracy in a sovereign country, you better pay up. But Zelensky then goes on to educate Vance on the conflict, as these two were doing what they usually do, the pretending, oh, it didn't start until Biden came into office, where, it started in 2014, obviously. And that's what seemed to set them off. Like, how dare you tell us we're wrong when we're doing propaganda, which shows these two literally just don't understand the conflict, the history, they have the geopolitical chops of toddlers. Because the angle to start with these negotiations are one that are much more beneficial to U.S. interests, not just conceding to Putin, because it's easier when down the line, in any long way you look at this, conceding to Putin here is worse for U.S. interests long term. The angle to be would be to start with something like the sanctions, like let's cease fire, let's exchange troops for like any troops that were captured during the war, and then we'll remove all Russian sanctions and you guys do a land swap and a peace agreement, something of the sort. Or what about a deal to admit Ukraine into NATO in the next 10 years, and in return we wind down our military bases and remove the sanctions in the region, given Russia upholds peace during the time. Anything that begins like an actual negotiation, but instead Trump is just forgoing all leverage before it even begins, because that's easy and you can still take credit. MAGA's going to give it to you regardless.
Zelensky had started giving a history lesson about how Putin first seized Crimea in 2014. Trump corrected him, said 2015. He's like, no, 2014. And then explained how they had signed two different peace deals with Putin, Minsk I and Minsk II, that Germany and France also signed to guarantee. And what he was trying to do was show Trump, you know, we have tried to do diplomacy before and it hasn't worked. He was being very genteel and patient as he explained it, and it was Vance who took offense and started interjecting, and then it was Vance, as he warmed up to his subject, who then also interjected the, I haven't heard you say thank you once. It was almost like he was bawling out one of his young kids, and he warmed to his subject, and once it became that tone, Trump took that tone on.
And it's weird because they even try to, with Zelensky, make this like a Democrat-Republican thing, which just shows how political brain these people are, as if Zelensky is here to do Democrat propaganda and not save his country, pointing out, oh, you get paid with Biden, who was the president at the time, and Zelensky was probably here trying to stay as favorable as possible, which, by the way, he went to a munitions factory that was producing weapons for him. It's not like he was like out on the campaign trail with Biden, but Vance was trying to say like, oh, Biden this, Biden that, before he does in a scolding tone, ask for like a thank you. Like, why don't you thank Trump? Do it right now on camera. It was super weird. I littered a few clips throughout here for you guys to watch for yourselves. I mean, but it's literally disgraceful to the highest office in our country that someone would do this. And it's scary because I don't know with how petty, childish, and willing to hold a grudge that Trump is, and how he's already had kind of a grudge against Zelensky for not letting him blackmail Biden the first time around before 2020, how they move on and do what's best for this conflict. And kicking the can down the road only makes it a bigger issue when it comes back around, as we're literally saying with this conflict right now.